started. Thank you. Within this session, we're going to be doing the introduction of hopefully sharing. Oh, no, you're already sharing your screen. That's right. Introduction of mobile OSs. These OSs have grown to include the platforms for mobile devices. Many tablets, smartphones, and other small devices have the actual S that are designed to run these devices and have different resources, capabilities, therefore require different types of systems. In this session, you're going to learn about the differences between these OSs and the other OSs themselves. Sorry, we will also compare and contrast the features and functionality of the three major OSs, which we should hopefully know by now are Android, iOS, and Windows. Ultimately, is to be able to describe high level the similarities and differences between these, compare and contrast the most widely used OSs, and obviously their features. Consumers' desire and expectations are key for these mobile devices and have driven obviously the evolution of the actual phone to the point that we're ridiculously walking around like Dick Tracy with a phone on our wrist. Mobile OSs are designed to enable the device's mobilities, obviously, as we learned, and support a smooth user experience and provide all-in-one devices. As our little joke was, it got rid of the USB, floppy, and God only knows what else, camera, right? Mobile OSs themselves differ than regular OSs. In particular, what's even funnier is one of the ones that had the multi gestures first is obviously your iOS, and you would think they would have came up. Well, at least correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, but I don't think an Air notebook you can touch the screen. The mouse pad is out of hand; it has all the gestures, but they don't have a touch screen.
I think one of the newest iterations does have a touchscreen, but for the most part, you are correct. No, the laptops and stuff like that do not have it on the actual screen. It is on the actual touchpad
Yes, and
and the
that's
keyboard.
which is killing them if you ask me. Because if they just cough up the money, but like you said, yes, the all-in-ones, those big ones with the monitor, I've seen it that some of those expensive ones, the screen is touch. You
Yes.
can touch the actual screen. Those are pretty cool.
And the same thing with the pins, with the styluses. Like you
Hmm.
can use standard styluses with almost any other device, but with Apple, you actually have to buy a proprietary stylus, which is rather annoying. And it is specific and Bluetooth connected to it rather than just using a standard stylus for the capacitive touch. They don't allow that for some reason, so that's actually a feature they actually turn off.
Tons of motherless ghosts. Well, we'll get back to them. As we said, mobile OSs do differ than regular OSs. We just mentioned one of the key features, which is obviously the actual touchscreen interface, mouse, and or keyboard. It has limited power supply, and it is obviously compared to a regular PC. It has a rechargeable battery, limited RAM because of obviously again the smaller, the less capabilities that they have compared to the latest and greatest ones that are out there for actual PCs. A lot of them do not have an actual Ethernet per se port on obviously notebooks, laptops, and those, yes, but mobile for phones or smartphones do not. We also know that within these, they have their own beautiful little store. You have your little app store for the apples. You have the Play Store for the Google, and I think the Marketplace or something like that for Windows. We're also going to be reviewing in this session your features like screen orientation, screen calibrations, GPS, geo tracking, Wi-Fi, and other features. Overall, we should be able to hopefully communicate clearly, especially when we're talking about these mobile devices and we're talking to the actual vendors and or the ISP or cell phone provider, whoever it is, when we're trying to communicate with them and or our client in reference to the actual issues that may pertain to them. and obviously expectations to be able to get their units back on a given time. Overall, the process of developing something requires a lot of time. All these phones just keep on changing continuously, so growth mindset is a must. People need to be able to obviously imagine that the latest and greatest phone that just came out is right out the door because another one's coming right back and challenging you even further to learn all the new little features and or intricacies that pertain to it. At this point, I believe I will be passing it off to one of my friends.
All right. Now, for the purposes of this, when we were talking about mobile devices, we are excluding laptops, even though they were typically included in past few sessions. When we would speak of mobile devices, we would include laptops within that. For mobile operating systems, that is not the case. Basically, it's a lighter weight version of an operating system. It uses lower power. It's able to operate mobily, relying heavily on the touch screens and applications, third-party apps added into them for their functionality. They typically, if you have a launch screen and then you have a lot of exterior applications that you buy, and depending on which device you're using, will allow the variability. If you're in an Apple device, you are pretty well locked into the App Store where you are purchasing your apps from within there or getting them from there. And in theory, they have checked them for security and making sure that there is no malicious software on there, and it is supposed to be safe and ready to go. You can jailbreak it, but as we spoke about in the last two sessions, that would void your warranty, and it would no longer be, if anything happens to the device, any failures in the device, they would no longer repair it for you unless you reset it to factory settings, and they did not catch that was done. Android allows a lot more third party with less regulation. And Windows, I think, also is a closed system software, but their market share, I think, is south of 1% in the mobile device area. The vast bulk of your operating systems are taken up by Android and Apple, with Android taking the larger of the market share. Mobile devices differ from standard operating systems with the use of the touchscreen interface as the main method for interfacing with it. Yes, you can pair a keyboard and a mouse with a mobile device and use it for typing. If you're, a student or in meetings or something like that, it can be easy if you have a collapsible keyboard or a mouse to go ahead and Bluetooth sync it, and it is a lot easier to type on a physical keyboard than actually try to input it on the mobile device. But the touchscreen is still your primary, much like on many desktops nowadays. You're starting to see the rise of it more and more. There are touchscreens on the actual devices, especially in the all-in-ones, although many times it is still easier to use a mouse rather than reaching all the way up across your desk going to the touchscreen. So though they do have these capabilities, still the primary method for input is the touchscreen on a mobile device and a mouse and keyboard on a standard desktop. Mobile operating systems operate off of a lower power supply, as they don't want to chew up that battery at a much higher rate, as it is not going to be plugged into a power source for the majority of its use. And they have limited RAM because it is a smaller device and they do not allow for that to be expandable. And they operate both on the cellular and Wi-Fi communication platforms, depending on the needs of the person using it. Although with the rise of Wi-Fi calling, it has freed up a lot of bandwidth on the cellular because people can, they don't eat up their minutes. They can operate off of Wi-Fi, although they are charging more and more for data because it seems to be the highest priority for most people with their mobile devices. And they use connectivity protocols other than Ethernet. Any questions so far? All right. As we were discussing earlier, it is kind of funny that they do throw in Windows as one of the primaries on this because their market share is so small. I mean, they were really trying to dive into the market when they were doing the Windows phones around the entertaining days of Windows 8. And can anybody tell me off the top of their head what phone manufacturer uses the Windows operating system? And you can still find that out there today, though it is very rare.
Is it Nokia?
Anybody know? That is correct. It is the Nokia. And so yeah, Windows operates typically on the Nokia devices. Android takes up a huge chunk of the market, 70.24%, and Apple taking up just over 1/4. So, I mean, though with commercials and stuff like that, it seems like Apple devices are extremely popular and they are the dominant force. It absolutely is not true. Android, hands down, controls that market. All right. And many companies, they tend to pair up and use their operating systems based on their particular devices, be it mobile phones, tablets, or phablets, the in between. Apple has the iPhone and they operate off of the iOS. Android is run off of Google devices, or Google operates Android. Windows Phone OS is another good one to remember for the Nokia. And then there are some others, smaller ones that are, most of them have been shut down, but some of them are still out there. The Apple OS, it is a closed source system, meaning they do not share their source code. They do not allow technicians access to it. They'll give them a developer's kit to operate from, to be able to load in, and then Apple will on the back end check that application, make sure that it is up to their standards, and then after that point, then they will allow it into the App Store. The operating system is based off of the Unix platform, as is the operating system for the desktops, all built off of the same platform. And move on to the Google Android, built on a Linux kernel, which is also developed, similarly off of the Unix platform. And it has a core set of libraries written in Java. They are maintained in the Open Handset Alliance, which means a lot of developers will get in and test out their systems within it. And then going back to the iOS, they just kind of use numbers. I know with the desktop operating systems, Mac OS, they tend to use, at first it was big cats, like, snow leopard, lion, mountain lion, and things like that. And now they're doing mountain ranges, and they're working their way up through that. Their actual phone operating systems are like 11.1 or something along those lines. They're moving up in the actual numbers. Google, on the other hand, goes in alphabetical order with, sweets. So, you see Jelly Bean, Kit Kat, Lollipop, Marshmallow, and they go that way. So easiest way to determine whether or not you are up to date or not is the letter that starts off with the name of your operating system. It is an open source. They share codes with all the technicians. It allows people to modify and change it as they see fit. And does have its ups and downs with regards to security, but for the most part, for the end user, it gives you a huge variety of applications, both within their store and third parties, and it's not as limited as the Apple Store. Any questions with regards to this? Google Android. Windows Phone operating system. It's pretty straightforward. Yo.
One thing, I don't know if this will be on the test or not, but people should be aware. Starting with Android 10, they've taken away the names, and now it's just 10 and 11.
That will not be on the test. That actually, when they started doing that, that was after the test had already come out. It's a great point. But as for the terms of the test, it is based off of the suite. Because remember, the test currently, I think, is 2.5 years old. They probably will be doing a revamp of the A+ either later this year or next year. So some of the information is a little out of date and will be brought up in the next iteration. So that's, again, why we would say sometimes in real life versus for the purposes of the exam.
Lucky for you all, because the suites that's so cool. This numbers, that's not cool. I'd rather they keep the suites, Chris.
Right, I need my candy.
Yeah, before I knew it was in alphabetical order, it used to, I was like, how the heck do you keep track of it without knowing what the freaking number is? Because I wasn't even paying attention to Mac OS, you know, being their versions being animal at the time. I was still on Windows, and I was wondering why, you know, they use suites. But now that I understand the logic behind it, it makes a lot of sense.
They still use mountains, right? I just want to make sure.
I think it's either mountains or they've moved on to state parks, I believe. I can't remember. I think they're on Sierra now. I think they might have moved on to parks, national parks or something. All right. Windows, also another closed source. They do not share their code. It's built off of the Windows NT kernel. Although someone was mentioning earlier today that they might be moving to the Linux platform, which ought to be interesting. And you have to download their developers kit in order to create applications and then essentially put them up for approval so that they can be added into the Windows Store. Other operating systems, just kind of keep in the back of your mind, because you may hear them mentioned from time to time. BlackBerry operating system terminated back in 2013. The great thing about BlackBerry was just it was extremely secure. It was, you know, virtually immune from viruses, and that was kind of the standard in the industry for the time. Symbian with Dana and Bell was terminated back in 2012. Bada, you still hear about every now and again. HP, which used to be on the Palm Pilots, Migo, which was replaced by Tizen. Tizen's still around, doing strong. They typically are seen on almost, you know, on the, I think over a quarter of smart TVs nowadays use the operating system that they had developed, and they continue to work on it and still hold a very large portion of the market share. You know, and you'll see them on Insignias and various different types, but they use this particular operating system. And so they are still very, very popular today. But these are just kind of good to keep an idea as to that they are out there, because some people have not fully updated, and just to be aware of them. All right. All right, Apple versus Windows versus Google Android. Android has the largest variety with the Galaxy, Nexus, LG, Fire TV, almost everything operating off of this particular operating system, hence partly why they control such a large share of the market, as well as the entry cost price point to get into the devices and start using them. iOS, typically operating off of the iPhone and the iPad, and then the Windows Mobile, as we were speaking earlier, on the Nokias. All right. As we were talking about earlier, Windows and Apple, closed source. They're proprietary software, very vendor specific. They do not allow access to the code versus Google, very open source, allowing vendors to have access and be able to utilize it and develop off of it. With closed source, they're given a developer's packet or developer's kit in order to develop applications and things like that. The app sources, most of you probably know this off the top of your head. Windows is, they just call it the market. Apple has the App Store, and Android uses the Google Play Store. Screen orientation, we'll get into this in just a minute. Screen calibration, positioning, geolocation, geo tracking, all those kind of fun things. Wi-Fi calling, launcher, which is your main launch screen, virtual assistants for each one of them, so on. All right. Basically went over this. iOS and Windows closed source do not allow access. It is a proprietary to those companies. And then open source being Android, where they allow developers to share and use the code. Any questions with regards to open and closed source?
Anybody want to take a gander or know why closed source versus open source, the philosophy behind it, and why Apple and Windows are leaning in on closed versus Android? Anybody just got the big picture with that or feel like they can speak on it? It's a reason,
Well, I know Apple and Microsoft do. They really like to control their software. And I think there's a safety issue too, particularly with apps on the phone, because they can vet the apps on the store and make sure that they're safe and who's producing them and whatnot.
Yeah, they like to have their hand kind of slightly positioned over the whole situation from beginning to end. You don't have that with Android, which, I mean, it's pros and cons to both ways. I get it, and I respect it as well. All the way back to with Apple, even if your phone is confiscated, like there were issues getting information off that phone because they were so sensitive about allowing that process to happen. They didn't want to open that Pandora's box. So hats off to them for taking that position. Like I said, everything has its pros and cons, but the neat thing about open source, to kind of speak on the other side, is the variety of things that you can do and have the ability to do, and who knows what you can touch with things that you make when you have that source code and have the ability to build on it. It's so many different individuals out there that's been able to break certain ceilings because they have the ability to work so closely with that source code. Chris, you was about to say something?
Isn't Android based off of the Linux operating system? So there may be contractual obligations within it to be open source.
Yes, Linux requires you print your code to a degree.
Yeah, to a degree. It's called the GNU project. They don't have to follow it. I can give you a good example. Ubuntu, they sell apps. That distro sells apps. It is very confidential with Linux. It's not supposed to be on sale. So yes, ideally they're supposed to, but not everybody follows the GNU convention, which means the organization is responsible for open source. So keep that with a grain of salt, unfortunately, in these situations. Yeah. Companies be companies.
I think it depends too if there's some combination of open source and proprietary software. Like Red Hat has an enterprise version of Linux that they sell, because I think that's the reasons, because a lot of it is proprietary.
It could also be that they have to publish their core code and may not have to do it with applications and functions within. So, I mean, some of these contracts are hundreds of pages long, so it's kind of, unknown what kind of loopholes they can plug into there with that kind of latitude. I mean, the beauty of open source is you can kind of build upon each other's creativity. When you see somebody do something kind of interesting, it might lead you to, a eureka moment where you can, you know, push the boundaries even further on top of what's currently going on. But with the closed system, you do have the benefit of greater security for the most part. Downside being with IO, you know, especially like with Apple or something like that, you don't own that operating system. You are licensing it from them. You are leasing it from them. So at any point, if they feel they don't like what you're doing, or they don't like, you know, that you might have violated their terms of service, kind of like YouTube or whatever, they can snatch that away from you, shut it down, and you won't be able to use it. So that's the downside of it, you know. But for general operations, yeah, there is more security, but again, you don't own it. So it's also something.
I wanted to mention that, Kelly. I didn't mean to stop your flow. I see you got a flow, but I just like, we talk about open source, closed source. There's a bigger picture there, bigger philosophy outside of what we, you know, we tend to take in. It's a little deeper. So I just wanted to know how people felt about it.
Yep. All right. Application sources, as we were just talking about this a little bit earlier, the biggest benefit of these phones and the most value we get out of them is the apps that we have on them, be it banking, entertainment, navigation, you know, work applications. We actually, when I was in transportation, we actually had a road service app where the guy could literally come up, call for road service, take pictures of what's wrong, and get it dispatched, and everything's taken care of in under a couple minutes, what would take a few hours, because we had a network of service providers that it was all connected to. And that was all done on apps on phones, which was just absolutely fantastic. Insurance companies are using it. So things are, you know, the supply line essentially to get things done is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And the automation is allowing us to accomplish things at a much higher rate. But as we were stating earlier, for Android, you have the Google Play Store, and that's where they keep the majority of it, although you can still go to third-party vendors and get them that way. Apple, very tightly controlled. You pretty much can only do it with the App Store. They used to allow a little bit of latitude where you could pull in third-party apps and go ahead and allow it. They allowed that for, I would say, probably about 3 or 4 years. And then people started abusing it. One of the big ones that there's lawsuits out there for is something that's called Bobby Movie. And people were using it to pirate movies. And that was one of the main ones that they cracked down. And basically now it's either App Store or nothing for the moment, unless you jailbreak the phone, which, as we had spoken about earlier, would then void your warranty. And then Windows Store, for the 10 or 15 people that still have the Windows phone, they could go in there and purchase apps through that and operate off of there. Yeah, Popcorn was another one that they used for movies, but it was Bobby Movie was the big one because they busted that guy because he was selling advertisements on Bobby Movie. Like Amazon was advertising on Bobby Movie, which was a pirated movie site. And then I guess in order to not go to jail, he was like, yeah, I'll give you my entire user list of everybody who's used my app. Here you go. And that's kind of how that ended up. But in that case, also, Apple also locked down their phones because they didn't want to be liable for it. All right. Here we go. Screen orientation built in within your phone. You have the ability to look at it either in a portrait or a landscape, depending on what you feel most comfortable with. In order to accomplish this, they have the accelerometer built in. Just lets it know how fast it's moving or if it's stopped, using some of the kinetic sensors, and also the gyroscope, which would help allocate for, was it pitch, yaw, and tilt. So they know exactly how the phone is positioned in space, and then it would reorient your screen to kind of help you. Some of that's a little frustrating, but many of them allow you the ability to lock that so that screen orientation does not change, and you can keep it in one position if that's something that does bother you. Any questions with regards to screen orientation? go. Screen calibration. Currently, today's phones, as we have talked earlier, use capacitive touch. Older mobile devices like the UPS, I can never remember the name of it. Joseph, you can probably chime in and let us know. The things you sign on for UPS use the resistive touch and have to be calibrated from time to time to make sure that they function properly so that when you touch the screen, it knows exactly where you're touching it.
Hey, Kelly, are you talking about the one where they sign for packages?
Yes.
That's Dyad.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Dyad. Modern mobile devices, tablets, phones tend to use capacitive touch, and all the calibration, thankfully, is done automatically. It is buried in there pretty far. You probably, for the most part, I know on Apples, on iPhones, you're not able to actually get in and do calibration because thankfully that is something that is reset and calibrated internally. Almost never will you receive a calibration error on a capacitive touch device. Any questions with regards to screen calibration? Thankfully, mobile device, automatic for the most part. All right. Positioning and geolocation, location services built into the phone. They do this by two ways. The first being the GPS, using the variety of satellites in the air, as we talked about earlier. It takes at least 3 to do a fixed position of where you're at for longitude and latitude. If you can get a fourth, it actually does altitude on top of that. And then on top of that, it also throws in a magnetometer, which is basically an electronic form of a compass, so that it allows to know where magnetic north is and knows your orientation and which direction you're pointing and traveling, so that it can help provide better directions for you. Sometimes you may notice when you turn on your GPS in your car and you first put in, or you're on your phone in your car, and you first start to go on your trip, it doesn't quite know which way you're pointed, so it may have you pointed the wrong direction. And then as soon as you start moving, it realigns everything because it knows which way your point is. Any questions with regards to geolocation?
I hope we realize and don't take for granted how far we've come with mobile technology. Like you literally got like a small little PC in your pocket, like that went from just being able to dial numbers and play Snake. Like it's so far, we're so advanced, and it shouldn't be taken for granted. And I just is a testament to just how we've advanced in technology. So I just hats off, but because I would have never thought this was where we were going with with Snake. Like I never would have saw this, but yeah, this is pretty neat stuff.
Well, I mean, it's the evolution. The evolution of technology is absolutely, phenomenal. I love it, and I've talked about it with my friends on multiple occasions where it's like literally in our lifetimes we went from computers being almost not seen on a regular day-to-day basis. They were, really big, bulky things that would only be in very high-end companies or something like that, to the point where when you got into high school, you're starting to see them get into everybody's homes on the very low level, to the point now where you basically have the summation of human knowledge in your pocket. It's just absolutely fantastic. In the early days of the computer, one of the top selling things you would buy was the Encyclopedia Britannica on DVD or on CD-ROM, so that you would have all the resources you needed for papers. And now you don't even bother with that. You can literally go look it up online. Although with that, you have to be more careful about the sources you're using. So, but absolutely, Marvin, it is amazing. And the rate of it keeps on doubling. Was it every 18 months? Technology doubles.
Hey, man.
Moore's law. Moore's law. That's what it is.
The Jetsons, man. I'm just waiting.
Well, the irony is like when you bring up Star Trek and you start talking about it, like if you look at some of the original like Star Trek and Next Generation, in some ways we are far more advanced than they were, and then in other ways we haven't even come close. So it's just kind of entertaining when you look at it, like the vision that the people had. You know, some of it they couldn't see far enough, and other parts they way overshot it. All right, geo tracking and geo tagging. Basically, your phone knows where you are at all times, keeps track of you at all times. And I think, what was it, Android, you could get a report at the end of every month, everywhere you have been, which is a little kind of scary, but you know, they allow it. You can turn these functions off if you want. I tend to turn it off for pretty much everything except for bare bones functions that I need it for. Almost any app you download is going to try to turn location services. Why? Because they want to know if you're coming near their store. If you're coming near their store, they want to alert you that they're there and what sales are going on right now. So Walmart, Lowe's, Target, all are really bad about those kind of things. So just think about it before you're using these apps if you want them to have access to that data, and then turn that off if you do not. Geotagging, they essentially put a longitude latitude stamp on every picture you take, so that when you pull up upload your photos into your computer, it'll pull up a map and show you everywhere you've been. And then people tend to be very eager about this, so they'll take a picture, which they put the geotag on it, post it on their social media, instantly saying, oh, we're having fun on vacation. Everybody knows you're gone now, and it's open season on your house. So there is security issues with this as well. So if you're the type of person that loves to take a lot of pictures on vacation and post them on your social media, safety first. Make sure you don't do it until you get home after vacation is over.
I know so many criminals. I love that information. Oh, you're not home today?
Oh, yeah. The popular one up in the Midwest for a while was they would use Craigslist. And they would say, so they would break into a home when they knew somebody was on vacation. Then they would post a yard sale on Craigslist. And then basically people would come and like clean out the house. Like, I'm moving, I just need to get rid of this stuff. And so they dump everything on the lawn that they didn't want. And then dozens of people would come and basically walk through the house and just destroy all the evidence. There was like a rash of those kind of break-ins for a couple of years up in the Midwest.
That's pretty inventive there. I'm not gonna lie. Like, let's make it so it's hard to see where we've been in here. That's pretty high. That's some high level stuff right there. I mean,
that's right. I was like, I give you points for creativity. But moral of the story, don't post on social media that you're on vacation until after you've already come back. All right. Any questions with geo tracking and geo tagging? All right. Wi-Fi calling was a wonderful feature for a while there. When they used to crack down pretty hard on how many minutes a month you had to be able to call. Some were nice and did free mobile to mobile. And then when everybody got a mobile device, they realized that was a bad thing. And then you had Wi-Fi calling, which was similar to voice over IP. And then uses an 802.11 connection. And it conserves your data use on your cellular bill for those who do not use or utilize an unlimited plan. And if it's functioning properly, you won't even notice that the calls switch over. Although I do know people that every time it tries to switch over, it will disconnect, and then they'll have to reconnect that call. All right. Launcher is basically the first thing when you turn on your phone. That is the background that you see with all your apps listed on there and everything that you have downloaded to your phone. It's basically like your desktop on your computer. It is, a GUI-based system. It allows you to organize, prioritize, and file your apps in a way that is most functional for you. I remember originally you couldn't group them together. It was literally you scanning through pages of apps, but now they allow file folders and stuff like that where you can tuck everything away nice and neat and group things by function, however you want to do it. Whether you want to group everything by entertainment or games or for work, things like that. Like I have everything I use for generation when I was doing the 1001, because the kids in class would share different apps that would have test banks and stuff in them and testing tools that we could use, as well as the Cyber Vista app for Kaplan, and then the one for our book and all that stuff. They had all those fun apps, so I just grouped everything together for my schooling and testing for certifications. I keep all that grouped into a singular folder just to make it easy for me to access. Virtual assistant, the big ones you got, and they tend to operate now on the computers as well as the mobile devices, and they can communicate with each other if they know they're allowed to do this. You have Siri on the Apple, was one of the first ones to come out, and they didn't really improve her since. She's just kind of fallen behind a little bit. Android has Hey Google, which was kind of fun, but and then you have Windows. Their virtual assistant would be Cortana for all you Halo fans out there. And Google currently is one of the most advanced ones. Siri is trying to develop, but the closed nature of Apple is kind of hindering them there. And Cortana has made huge strides in the short period of time that one has been out as well. The only downside with these is the microphone is always on, it's always listening. And security reasons, a lot of people do not like that particular thing. In theory, it's not recording, but it is always listening for those wake words. So anything that's listening for a wake word, the microphone is always on. So any questions with regards to virtual assistant? You had something to say, Laz, on that one?
Well, you know that Google does not like my voice. Okay, Google. Nope, it didn't work. I heard somebody else's phone, but not mine. Wait, does anybody else have a Google phone here? I heard someone's Google phone. It wasn't mine. Okay, Google. No. Okay, Google. Ah, this time it works. Sometimes it works, but for some reason it hates my voice. I find it funny.
Sometimes,
there you go.
Sometimes you actually have to train them. It's interesting. Like they will ask you to say a series of phrases so that the AI can pick up your speech patterns, how you enunciate things, and how you talk, so that it can better respond to you. So Apple did not do that. I believe Cortana did do, where you would actually have to teach, like calibrate it and teach it by, saying a series of phrases. But I'm not sure about Android with or Hey Google. I don't think you had to with them either. But the other thing is if it has trouble, which is why it needs to be internet connected, there actually is a human that listens to that and then acknowledges what it is and then allows that command to go through.
Very spooky.
I hope it
There's
never.
a funny meme from a while ago where it showed a picture of, like, in the 1950s, in the future, the government's going to have listening devices in every home. And then it was like, now, hey, listening device, what's the weather going to be like today? So. All right, development kits. You have SDKs and ADKs. And I guess it's because they basically copyright the name for it, so you have software development kits and application development kits, depending on who you're using. And this is so third-party developers can develop apps for the Android or the Apple devices and then get approval through their systems in order to be able to post in their stores. With Windows, they use Visual Studio. That was a big thing for a while, being able to program within Visual Studio And if you could use that language, that was really big for a while, although I'm not sure if they're still using Visual Studio. I don't know if you can, if Laz or Marvin, if you know if they're still using it.
I mean, technically speaking, yes. Though now that I heard the news that they may switch, I'm not sure how true that is. Well, Microsoft's just going through a lot of changes right now. We have to wait to see exactly, but so far, Visual is still something they use heavily, though, that I'm aware of. They're still heavily. We could change next year, though.
All right. Android Developers Kit, also called Android Studio. And then once they're developed, they distribute them in a standardized package. The Android Application Package, APK. All right. Any questions with regards to Developers Kit? This is all stuff you kind of need to know at like a 10,000-foot level. It is not heavy in detail. It's mostly just knowing which ones go with which devices, like which operating system, which app store, which one is open source, how often do they do their updates? Is it once a year? Is it every Tuesday? Is it once a week? Is it just randomly whenever? You know, these are the things that they will be asking. So these are very high level when it comes to regards to mobile device operating systems.
As we try to get you prepared for the test, it'll be off-putting to just try to teach the test. So along with getting the information that's pertinent, you tend to grab onto some stuff that's just out there and available, and that goes along with the information that we're mostly concerned with. So, but hopefully for people who are that came in savvy, some of these words and some of these things now just you take hold and be like, oh, that's what APK was when I downloaded that on my Fire Stick and things of that nature. Like it started to real, you know, you get it. You start to fill in those gaps. So I think it's neat because when like I said, when I took the class, I was able to I realized how much I thought I knew and didn't, one, and two, I realized that the things that I did know, I only knew it to like base, the second base. I couldn't take it home. So now it feels good to be able to take some of that home. So hopefully you guys are being able to embrace it in that fashion.
All right. Emergency notifications. I'm sure everyone here has at one time or another been woken up in the middle of the night with one of these, whether it be a tornado warning, earthquake warning, flood warning, amber alerts, silver alerts, if there are those of you who don't know what that is. Anybody can tell me what a silver alert is? Really big in Florida.
That's a good one. Well, what's the one for the babies?
Silver
what is that called? Amber, right?
Amber alert is for babies.
So think about it.
For
silver?
Adolescents. Silver alert.
Old people that wandered away from their nursing homes?
Silver.
There you go. There's another one. That's a silver alert. Those are real big in Florida. We get those all the time driving down the interstate.
That happened to me.
Yeah. So they, these are things that are now built into phones, and the Amber Alert one is absolutely fantastic because it increases the response time, gets that information out there as quickly as humanly possible, and allows for a much greater success rate with recovering child if they're kidnapped or something along those lines. So. All right, mobile payment services. This is one of Diego's favorite. He says he loves to use this on absolutely everything he does. It's basically a wireless mobile payment system. If you want, you can attach your credit cards to something like this. Me personally, for security reasons, I don't personally like doing this. But the most popular one uses Square. You see that a lot with mobile vendors. If you ever go to trade shows, festivals, things like that, they'll have like a little tablet with a little square tipped in, and then they use it like a mobile device. Although, unfortunately, it does store those credit card information on their devices sometimes, and it's an increased security risk. Google Pay, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, everybody's kind of developing these. The U.S., we are way behind in this particular technology. This was out in Europe and Asia probably back in the early 2000s. They were already using this. Like you could walk up to a vending machine, scan the QR code on the vending machine, it would charge your cell phone bill, and you could get a soda out right there and walk away. We were 5-10 years behind in this particular technology. So we are trying to catch up, but that ball keeps rolling faster and faster, and it's hard to keep up on an accelerating system. Any questions with regards to mobile pay? All right. And with that, hand you back over to Diego for closure.
Thank you. So by now we should hopefully be able to describe the high level similarities and differences between these OSs and the other OSs, which entails your iOS, your Android, your Windows, and the common features that they usually come with. At this point, this does conclude this session. Any questions or concerns on any of these specifically mobile smartphones?